So those are $10 each. So we went through like 10 of those.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Oh, mercury is the problem.
I don't understand how that's legal. It's probably because it's international waters. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I guess it's not. All right, I think we are live on all.
All right. Hello, everybody. We're getting going here.
Yeah, we're trying. My
switched over.
remote thing is not working.
Facebook switched over to what?
To the stream.
It is streaming. All right, I think we're good on
Oh,
Instagram. Is YouTube up?
YouTube is still delayed.
Awesome.
YouTube Yules.
Now we're good.
It's working? Hey! All right.
All right.
Guess we're up and going. There.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to the 034 Motorsport Live. I'm Javad.
I'm
This
back.
is Nate. Nate's back from his vacation. And he can like work again, which is great. It's always nice when
Wonderful.
Nate works, things happen. You guys get products.
Yep.
And fixes and new features. So as always, this is a Q&A session. We're going to answer all your hot burning questions about 034 Motorsport, our products and services, about the history, anything about me or Nate that you'd like to know about. You can ask automotive general questions. Sometimes I wax philosophically about lessons I've learned in life, and that apparently upset somebody last week.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, I was told to stick to car shit.
Oh.
And so I told them to take a hike.
Yeah.
And then they said they were sorry or something, and they decided to stick around.
Stick to being a nice human being.
This is our live chat, and we do get to talk about whatever we want. And hopefully you like it and you stay. But if you don't, there's, I think, TikTok.
We're not forcing you to watch this.
There's a lot of trends and on Instagram Reels. OnlyFans is a good option. Now, granted, ours is free. I think all the OnlyFans you have to pay, but well, except Sean's is free. Well, in the beginning, you just
you gotta get
free
viewership
to get your
I didn't know.
to get that market penetration out there.
I didn't know I had them. Did someone make it for me? I just
Oh, you didn't know?
pictures.
I don't know.
You gotta read the fine print on those employee handbooks.
All right, so we have some questions rolling in already, and we have some from last week. If we don't get to your question, we don't usually have time to go back to wow. There's a lot of questions from last week.
Yeah.
Just if you happen to see the show again, the live, whatever they're called, then just put your question in again. Well, we try to prioritize the current questions from this week for anyone who's actually here. All right, someone's asking, B9 S4 Stage 2 TCU tune shifts super hard. Sometimes the car would jitter. Waiting for 034 drivetrain suspension parts and trans insert install. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts?
I mean, there's been some talk of it depends on what gear you're in. Some people have mentioned there it's a little crisper than they want on like light
second gear
throttle shifting. I think into second or second to third. That is something we are working on right now, actually, to soften that up a little bit. Some people love it. Some people think it's a little aggressive. So that's that's the balance we always try and fight with these things. So if that's what it is, maybe just shoot tuning at j34motorsport.com. So, email them some more specifics on exactly when it's happening.
If we can log it, then that's the way to do it.
And then, or if it's just like literally, if it's that situation, we'll probably switch up with a file to try out and see if it fixes for you. Because, we've had a couple of people think it's a little too crisp on some of the shift points.
Yeah, and
it's only light.
We are working on it, and we are going to try to address that.
And like I said, we're just trying to balance out what most people want because everybody wants something just slightly different than the next guy. So
I mean, we can break necks with these shifts, or we can make them really slow.
Get in there quick.
So we're trying to strike a balance, and we can make them faster, but then they're abrupt.
Yep.
Is the catch can for the Mk7 GTI necessary upgrade for tracking? I would say yes. I mean, I don't think you'll blow up your engine or get a complete failure of any kind. But if you'd like to eliminate the huge white clouds of oil burning smoke out the tailpipe, then I think it is. It's a great upgrade, and I would say it's as necessary as any other track mod that you could do. Not a bad idea on street cars either, but it's It's a good thing to do. For the B9, any idea why Audi went to air-to-water intercooler for the 2.9 versus the 3.0?
The 3.0 is air-to-air, so
Yeah.
more traditional heat exchanger.
I don't think we know. I mean, we could guess and we could talk about the advantages and disadvantages, but we can't say for sure. I mean, it could have had something to do with the fact that they didn't feel like they could put a higher capacity, bigger air-to-air intercooler in the room in the front there. There's obviously plenty of room for it.
Right.
Aftermarket companies have found that out, but you know, with crash testing and all the other considerations that a manufacturer like Audi would take into account, you know, they went with the air to water, you know, probably because they didn't want to put a bigger air to air in the front.
Yeah, it's so hard to know what the reasoning is.
Yeah.
It may not honestly mean anything other than when it was developed, that was their design, design ethos, and
it was a different
migrated
team.
away. You know, and because all the the supercharged stuff is obviously all air to water for more obvious reasons, but the S6, all of the 4.0 Ts and stuff, so it may have just been developed during that era where they were doing all of that and they migrated away, or it could have been fully engineering driven.
Yeah, it's important to keep in mind, Audi, a manufacturer like Audi, huge corporation, huge, massive company, they do things for a myriad of reasons, and power and performance is almost never the main reason, why anything would be done.
Yeah, outside of like a marketing number. It's
regulations are a huge factor. We met with Audi once and met with some of their engineers, and they spent a lot of time talking about laws and regulations, and
diagnostic
risk and
stuff.
liability.
Like most of their development work is like diagnostics and OBD stuff, and then performance. The amount of like engineering effort into it.
Now, a company like 03 Motorsport, we focus on what performs. We also take into account cost and market factors and laws and regulations. Mm-hmm. But, we kind of exist, and companies like us exist because we can dial out all those other considerations that Audi took into account.
They've already done it. Yeah.
And we can optimize the performance variable where, for them, there's, safety, legal safety, DOT crash, air to air may have interfered with the crash requirements. We don't. So the good news is the air to water setup is good, and
it's decent. Yeah,
and
it's pretty decent.
They're typically good. So I don't know. Maybe someday we'll put an air to air on them or something and see. But for now, you can make a lot of power with something like a Wagner installed.
Yep.
The factory one's limited.
The factory one's limited. The Wagner kit has been performed.
With the Wagner, well. You can do a lot more. Have you heard anything on potential B10 powertrains? Not really. No. I don't know much. I think based on what we've heard from Audi, that they're not really doing a lot more internal combustion engine development. My guess is they're going to be very similar to what we have now.
Yeah, and that also means we don't know what that means either. If that means their current generation engines that are out are the latest and greatest, or if they've got some other stuff that's
that's my impression.
A couple of years behind in development that's still going to be newer than what we have now.
Yeah, it's possible they have a new drivetrain that they haven't released yet that will be the last generation, but the 2.0 T is Gen 4. That's probably the last. I did read that the current generation 4.0 T is going to be the last.
That's it.
And then I think, there's things like the 3.0 T and the 2.9 T. Those are pretty new meters. So they're really good. So I'll see. But no, I don't usually spend too much time researching this stuff because a lot of the stuff you read a year or two before is almost never true.
Yeah.
Like I remember reading that the Mark 8s were going to be like, they were going to have like a flywheel starter that was lightly electric.
Oh,
that
the mild hybrid and built-in
that would have like a 10 horsepower assisted electric, and that obviously didn't happen. And there's big long articles on how that's going to happen, like a year before those cars came.
Right.
So,
Yeah, then there's nothing you can do with speculation. I mean, we have to wait till we see what actually gets landed.
And there's plenty of websites out there that create these kind of rumors and then report them like they're legitimate
Yeah.
to get traffic and hits. It's very, I mean, some of these websites have come and gone. But I think there's other sites like that are more reliable. But
Or that could have been the accurate information at the time, and then
Yeah.
design and manufacturing considerations change.
someone's asking, why is it so difficult to reinstall my stock end links with your upgraded sway bar? This is probably an issue with your end links not being adjustable. And so you're having to twist the bar to get it to line up correctly.
And if you're doing this with any weight on the wheels, it's usually going to be a bear. You really got to let both wheels go to a full droop, either with jack
Yes.
stands or on a lift.
Yeah, do it with it in the air. Absolutely. That's because then the kind of uneven load on the suspension will be eliminated. But that's why one of the reasons we do adjustable length end links in as many applications as we can.
Yep.
It's not always possible. Do I need an SRM or Artek low pressure fuel pump for the TTE710? No, you don't need
Everything we've run so far has been on the stock front pumps.
I think there's some companies out there that are making it sound like the low pressure fuel pump's a problem.
No, we've had
including an individual who's been spreading a lot of false information.
we've had no issues so far. The low pressure side on these is so far outflowing what the high pressure is able to. So we're at a pretty good point with those still.
We're all about doing upgrades, don't get us wrong. But we try to focus on the upgrades you actually need that actually make a difference. And if the stock fuel pump flows enough for 710 horsepower and there's no reason to upgrade it, then there's plenty of other stuff you could be doing to the car that will be give you much more benefit. Can E40 make injectors louder in regard to the B9 S4?
No, so here's the thing. The injectors are going to be open longer. Maybe you're hearing some difference there. The fuel pump is going to be working a little bit harder to maintain pressure just because there's more fuel flowing through it. So you're going to hear some differences potentially. But as far as making the injectors louder, not really. Under full load, there's going to be different pressure targets for those injectors. So yeah, they might be slightly louder at full load.
Yeah.
Right? You can never
But
hear the injectors over everything.
There's no difference in the acoustics between E85 and gasoline.
No, I mean,
inside the injector.
It would just be like I mentioned, the time the injectors are open is different, and we do run some different fuel pressures. But at idle, the pressure are all
which is tuning related, not related to the fuel. Does going stage 1 on B9 RS5 platform mean thicker oil should be used? No, we don't currently recommend anything other than factory oil. Oil thickness is related, really not related very much to the load that the engine sees, or a slight, going from 400 and some horsepower to 500 or 600, it's a pretty small increase in load on the engine from an oil standpoint. Thickness would be related more to the temperature that the oil is being used, how cold it is when the engine starts, and then also viscosity is related to the tolerances inside the engine. So if you built an engine with bigger tolerances, say in the main bearings, so you went from 1.5 thousandths of clearance to 2 thousandths clearance, then you would want to run a thicker oil. You would open up increase tolerances if that motor was seeing extremely high loads, like if it went from like 300 horsepower to 600 or 700 or 800, or doubling or tripling of power. And then also, if engines get really hot, that metal and those materials expand, and so you have to allow room for that expansion. There's actually like F1 motors that start out oval when they heat up and get to temperature, or they get to their 20,000 RPM load points. Everything's round in tolerance. So there's really no need to mess with oil on any of these platforms with like stage 1, stage 2 type stuff. They seem like they're a lot of power. A stage 1 B9 RS5 is making like over 500 and some horsepower. That used to be like a built 27T. Nowadays, that's just an ECU flash and some bolt-ons. So the factory oil's fine.
Yeah, I mean, if there's ever a time too when we see that we need to recommend something, or there's a limitation in the stock hardware that needs to be addressed, then we'll be sure to specify that. We don't want people out there running like an unsafe or untested scenario. So no, we've fully track tested these, beat the crap out of them as much as we can, with the factory components in place, and only if we see an issue will we start looking elsewhere.
For the B9, are the bushings on your Dynamic Plus end links upgraded over the stock end link bushings? Yes, we run a higher, stiffer durometer of rubber than the factory end links, so there is less deflection or compliance in those bushings. Does upgrading just the radiator heat exchanger make adequate changes to cooling, or should I swap the intercooler out on B9 RS5? We haven't. We went straight to an intercooler.
Yeah, we went straight to the full setup. I have not tested back to back to know which one's a better bang for the buck.
It's probably there. It's probably a solution to something like on the B8 3.0T. You're
stuck with
intercooler
for the heat exchanger.
With the RS5, you can just, and on the B8 too, you'd much rather put bigger bricks in there. And since you can't, then you have to do as much as you can with the heat exchanger.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I would say probably the heat exchanger, or the actual intercooler itself would probably be more influential than the heat exchanger. But again, that's just off the cuff. I haven't tested either way.
It just depends on how fast that heat exchanger can shed heat back into the coolant systems. Can you explain why not all ECUs are the same and not one map fits or writes to all? Are you talking about like box codes?
Probably. There's a lot of reasons. You got to think of it from like an OEM standpoint. So lots of cars these days are, I'm just going to speak for current generations. This goes way back to even, since computers have been in vehicles, they have a myriad of different software configurations on them. But currently, you've got to take into account things like aerodynamics, body mass, gear ratios. Obviously, then, and that's just the mechanical configuration of the car, because you've got a lot of things that are nearly like full self-driving vehicles these days, even with just what seems to be like simple cruise control systems. Much of them are now lane control, radar radar adaptation. So it has to have a much tighter control over vehicle dynamics, brake systems. It's a much more holistic computer in the vehicle than just running the engine. It's got to account for a lot of other stuff going on in the drive in the vehicle. So that's one reason. Different markets will get different power levels oftentimes. On the B8, you could get the A4 with a 3-liter, but it was detuned just in software. It's the exact same hardware, same engine, same everything. So there's just piles and piles of reasons as to why there's different software out there for different platforms.
And it's like what we were talking about earlier. They have all their reasons. There's 20 different reasons they change stuff. And it could be legal compliance. It could be they're
all kinds of things.
They're moving to some new software or firmware configuration.
Yeah, and that's another thing is like literally their software code base does evolve as they're adding or removing things. Sometimes I was talking with a couple of my guys this morning, but some of the early RS5 ECUs have a lot of additional like torque monitoring and torque control maps, or they're like a 16 by 16 table when they could be a 4x4 or an 8x8.
But since it's early on, so they're not sure what they're going to want, and they'll simplify that down a lot. Yeah, they could, once they know what works, then they can get rid of some of the extra. So there's a lot of reasons.
There's a lot of reasons, and then they'll change hardware around. They'll put different PCV systems on that need slightly different controls or test patterns around it. So.
Hey there, saw that y'all have some billet aluminum lowering links on the website. Are there any downsides, advantages to using lowering links versus an electronic module with OEM air suspension on a B9.5 SQ5? There's advantages and disadvantages. Those electronic modules, like how much are they?
Well,
Yeah.
they're not cheap.
They're not cheap.
Yeah. So the lowering links are cheap. Ours sell for 100,
15.
1,500 bucks. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to add that to the stuff.
1,200.
Yeah.
But the popular one on the market's over $1,000. So you could buy 7 sets of our lowering links for the price of one of those. The advantage is the lowering links are simple and cheap. And once you set the height of your suspension, it never changes. Someone I know has one of these, and their car just like randomly goes up.
It's really interesting because it's trying to work in not really parallel, but it's trying to like override what the factory system's doing. And so sometimes the factory system's managing things, and then this thing takes over, and so like you'll like open the door and the car drops, which is,
Or you open the door and it goes to off road.
or yeah, you open the door and now your car's 10 inches in the air. So they're not perfect, at least from what we've experienced.
The disadvantage is you lose the adjustability. So if you want to pull up to the club and air down,
you can sort of do that now already. You've got off-road, normal, sport, and
I guess there is that
so you can
stuff
already
on the
do that on the
factory.
dash and all these vehicles anyway.
But once you set our lowering link, you set the length, then your car will always be at that height from a base standpoint, and then
Yeah, and all
the
of
factory stuff will raise and lower.
right, all of your factory stuff will be relative.
If it was, I don't currently own a air ride vehicle. I would do lowering links. That's what I would do, which is why we sell that. I mean, we could spend the time to do an electronic module someday. That a better one works better, but for me, I don't want to screw with it, and so I would just use the lowering link to reliably raise and lower, and I'd rather spend like $150.
Yeah, right.
$1,200 for an electronic module. That's a lot. I could spend money on stuff. So, is it okay to run dynamic plus lowering springs on stock struts and springs without worrying about wear? Is there any issues if I do not trim the bump stops of the lowering springs? So all of our dynamic plus lowering springs are designed and engineered and developed for use with factory struts and shocks. If there was a need to trim a bump stop or something like that, we would list that. Currently, based on the relatively sane and functional lowering rates that we use, we don't have any need for you to trim bump stops on any of our springs at this time.
I think we do.
No, for B9A4, which this guy has, there's one model we do.
Yeah.
But
It says in the instructions.
wherever we require it,
Yeah.
we state it.
Yeah.
Apparently, there might be one that I don't know about from like 8 years ago, but it would say in the instructions. But no, please do not go cutting your bump stops.
If it is in the instructions, though, yeah, I mean, there's a reason for that, and it is operating at a lower, operational range. So you'll be, the consequence to not doing that is you're going to be hitting the bump stop more than
You would essentially be, the car would feel like it was bottoming out.
Yep.
The strut wouldn't actually be bottoming out, but and then if you have a really a car that's either old or has a lot of miles on it, it could be possible that you need new struts or shocks. I would say in my experience, it's very rare. We almost never replace those.
We're lucky in California, at least. We don't have the harsh conditions. So, I mean, I think all of our vehicles are still on the OEM struts.
But I remember in like the 80s and 90s, cars, you'd have to replace the shocks and struts every like couple years.
Yep.
They would just wear out. You'd go to, the Wheeler tire shop and you get some KYB, gas struts or something. And it was like, I remember when I was a kid, we had a Chrysler minivan, and that thing needed new shocks every couple of years.
Yep.
And I would remember my dad would take it in, and then you could just feel the car it felt like a new car again, But no, these new Audis, they come with extremely expensive, high quality shocks and struts. Many of them have magnetic ride dampening or the other version with the valving changes inside. So we definitely recommend good OEM shocks. If the car feels bouncy or something like that, then it could be that you do need to change them. And then in some cases you could go with like a Bilstein option an aftermarket option. We just don't test those.
Yeah,
So we
it would be
can't speak to how
endless testing. Yeah.
Someone's asking about our B8 brake kit. I think by the fall would be realistic. We are currently working with our caliper manufacturer on a really nice 8-piston caliper, and we had initial size that we tested, and now we're changing the piston sizing to be more accurate. Yeah, definitely. So, but I think I'm hoping we can release by the fall. It will be a really good kit. We have a kit on S4.0T right now, but it's just not production. How much longer will the wait be for TTE720 B9 RS5 tune? And have you started on development? We're not super far into it as far as, we're not like, if we were calibrating it today, we would have a tune of it shortly.
Yeah, no, we've done some preliminary work on it, but yeah, it's not currently in active calibration right now. We've got some other projects that
It's
are
being
slotted in.
prioritized behind a few other things, but I'd like to think that we should probably have it by this year, by the end of the year. I know we have an engineering calendar event for it. That's set, but I would just say enjoy stage 1 E85 for now if you can. That's fucking fast.
Yes, it is.
I took our RS5 home last week. Things bonkers. It should be insane with the 720. High pressure fuel pump and intercooler for MQB. Thank you for this weekly show. You're welcome. We're happy to do it. We look forward to it. We are working on a 034 Motorsport tube and fin intercooler for Mk7 MQB. And also our high pressure fuel pump should be ready to come to market in the next few months. So not too far off. And the intercooler, I'm really excited about. We're way late to the party, but our goal is to, we basically bought every other good reputable intercooler on the market. We tested them all. Our goal is to come out with something that's better than everything else. If we're going to come out with it now, it at least needs to be the best. Do you have any plans to produce a high flow cat for the B9 SQ5? I don't know. We put those on hold. Currently, we're offering the Wagner unit, and it seems like a perfectly good unit, so we'll probably continue to offer that. ETA for B9 super duper inlet for TTE710. I think we're about a month out or so. Yeah, so hang in there. It's coming soon. It'll be the nicest option on the market for sure. Someone's asking about these control arms. These are our new density line B9 control arms. These fit all popular B9 sedan options like the S4 and the RS5, and that they fit SQ5, right, Sean? No, SQ5. Okay, those are bigger.
Yep.
I thought one of them did. So this is our standard density line control arm. So this is a factory style forging. This is our forging. Our logo's etched in. And then we re-engineer the bushings to be as stiff as possible while still giving long-term reliability. But this is the stiffest rubber we can put into a torsion bushing like this, which these bushings twist on themselves. So if you go too stiff, the rubber at some point will just tear. And then on the inner bushing, most of the factory stuff is fluid filled in here, and so once the rubber can fail and all the fluid leaks out, then all of a sudden this bushing just trashes itself. So these are solid. Well, they're not solid rubber, but they are full rubber bushings that are shaped to again allow the twist and torsion around that axis when your suspension compresses. These are available right now, just the lowers, and then we do sell our adjustable uppers, which allow for camber or camber correction. Yeah. So you can either we have two sets. One's to if you want to reduce your camber because you lowered your car too much. The other would allow you to get camber if you want, you know, more grip, traction from your tires. And these also include new ball joints as well. So
As well as all the hardware.
yes, and the full hardware kit complete. I know I've seen other companies. I don't know if anyone else is. I think we're pretty early to market on B9 control arms, but like in the B5, B6, B7, B8 arm kits that we sell, most companies just throw in one generic hardware kit, and like half the hardware actually works. So we've spent the time to go through every piece of hardware and make sure that every kit you buy comes with the correct hardware for your make.
And it is not easy.
And it's
so many
very
combinations.
complicated. There's literally thousands. I mean, we have these spreadsheets tracking it. There's thousands of part numbers and changes, and from year to year. So we've done that to provide the best quality result for customers, and that hardware should all be changed when you change your control arms. Someone's asking about a B9 2.0 T software update. Nothing to report. Still on our radar. Someone's saying, please test your intercooler with the CSF radiator for compatibility. That's a good
With the MTB setup.
Mark, if you're listening. That would be good to do. There's no reason we can't do that.
Yeah. I think might already have that radiator on the GTI. I think it may have already indirectly been tested.
What maintenance would you recommend for the transmission running a stage 2 TCU tune? Any intervals?
It's going to really depend on which transmission we're talking about. Audi, on like a lot of the automatic transmissions, will list, like the ZF stuff, will list a lifetime fluid. It's usually anything but. So most people, I think, are around 40 to 50,000 miles. They're changing their fluids out on those.
Yeah.
DSGs, I believe they expect like a 70,000 mile maintenance interval. And same thing. I think 35 to 40 is a much better place to swap those out.
Yeah.
And even if you're a bone stock car, that still holds true. So those intervals get tricky because manufacturers are tasked with hitting certain maintenance costs and targets through the vehicle's lifetime. So even though it would be probably fine if you left the fluid in there through, I think they have to do a certain amount of maintenance in like the first 100,000 miles. It's not, that doesn't mean it's the most optimal solution for that given setup. So no, definitely 40,000 miles or so for automatic, and 35 to 40 for a DSG has worked really well for us.
S6 4.0T tuning update. We haven't really been working on that much.
Not much time to get a lot done with that.
It's just another thing that's on our radar. It has not been firm.
Oh no, I hear it every day.
I have a B9 S4 on stage 1 ECU TCU with an X34 intake. Should I get the Wagner intercooler next, or should I get the stage 2 TCU and trans mounts? All of it?
Yeah, I mean the stage 2 TCU is not going to really have any impact on air temps and performance. It is a substantial visceral or substantive feel driving experience change. The intercooler is definitely something
you're going to gain power.
You're going to gain power, and you're going to have a much more performant vehicle over any kind of sustained load. So anything more than just like an on-ramp rip, you're going to start noticing that intercooler pretty quick.
Yeah, no, and on the 3.0T, the intake and intercooler, like we've said, basically, gets you 3/4 of the way to full stage 2 power without changing your CAT, or without
and that's
defeating your emissions.
Simply because we require it for stage 2, but it is fully functional and will work great on stage 1. We just advertise all of our numbers with stock components because stage 1 doesn't require those.
Would the TTE720 tuning work with air-to-air intercooler setups?
So I was looking, I just did some quick searching. I haven't seen or heard of an air-to-air intercooler setup for the RS5. Is there something?
Let's ignore that.
I think what people are doing is custom.
Yeah.
Their concern is the setup for having that off.
We don't know. We haven't tested that.
It entirely depends on.
It should be okay.
And how that solution is done, and whether you just leave the pump in there and let it pump itself, put it in its own loop. But it's hard to say on custom setup what you're doing. But in theory, it'll be fine. As
long as the the air, the air temps. The ECU is
It's
tracking
actually better than your current.
I don't know if like the flow would substantially change coming into the motor, or if that could have.
I don't think so. I mean, unless you do a terrible job of the piping and making it way worse.
Will you come out with a stock CAD file for TTE720 on the RS5 similar to the TTE720 on the S4? Yes,
Absolutely.
In fact, you may have seen or heard that we did not release a stage 2 for B9 2.9T because there was no power gain at stock
For the stock turbo here.
So if we find the same thing with TT720, then I think we would probably not offer a catalyst file for that either.
Yep.
We suspect that there will probably be some power to be gained at that higher flow level for racing use. So we will keep you posted. When can we expect flow form wheels, colors? What will they look like? Are there changes needed based on construction? Sean, can you jot the colors that were coming on? Nick should know those. Yes, so we have flow form production samples here that we're testing. They are basically the ZTF 01 style. There are changes though, because unlike this fully forged wheel, the strength of the material is reduced with flow form manufacturing construction. So in order to make up for that, we have to add material. So our flow form wheels will look very similar to this style, but you'll just notice thicker spokes and material in here has been filled some amount. So they're just going to look a little beefier and chunkier than the forged wheels, but our goal is to create the lightest and strongest flow form wheel possible, and we have baselined or benchmarked against some of the other very popular options on the market that you've heard of and aware of. So colors will be our classic anthracite color, which is my favorite. That's anthracite. For the hipsters out there, we will be offering bronze. We will have hyper silver, which is it's basically a lit silver color.
It's very similar to this, kind of like a clear coated version of
it's like aluminum. Silver but turned up, I guess the kids would say, and then satin or some kind of black.
Yeah.
What's the black?
I believe it's the same satin black.
Satin black, yeah, which is kind of a matte black finish or satin, which just implies that there's just a very light gloss. It's not flat, but it's not glossy. It's not a glossy paint, which honestly, most black wheels aren't black gloss. The clear coating on silver wheels is gloss, but I think a black gloss wheel would look weird. So most of the time, what you see is sad. We hope to be able to release these in the next few months, so stay tuned. They will be at a very competitive price point, much more competitive than our forged wheels. Our forged wheels are still the shit. If you want the best wheel, I strongly recommend the 034 ZTF forged wheel. But if you'd like to hit a much lower price point, then our float form wheels will be out for that. Is there an ETA on shipping flashing cables? Yes, we are out of flashing cables. We're sorry. If you need to flash your car, please contact customer service. And we have loaner cables that we can send. So we can send you a cable, and then you can flash your car and send it back to us. We're doing that in the meantime to accommodate any customers. We should be shipping cables in about 2 weeks if all goes well. With the chip shortage and a lot of the supply chain issues, we have run out of cables. At the same time, our sales of cables are like doubling regularly.
We're in a rough spot there.
So it's harder to get stuff, and it's selling faster than ever at an exponential rate. So we will end up, unfortunately, I mean, for us, being out of cables is the worst thing. But we can make sure that you get flashed. We do have longer cables, so please,
We're getting them manufactured as quick as we can right now.
yeah, contact at 034motorsport.com. What's the future with A4 B5 products? Many are still loving the B5 platform. That's great. As long as many people are loving it and they continue to buy the products, we will continue to sell and support them. At this time, I don't really see any issues with any of our B5 products for the A4 or the 2.7. They're all selling well. But when it gets to a point where inventory moves slowly, then that's when we move to discontinue products and invest that money into other products that people actually want. So let's say there's a B5 product that we have on the shelf, and we have $3,000 of inventory sitting on the shelf. So that means the company took $3,000 of cash, turned it into those products, and now those products are sitting on the shelf. That money is sitting on the shelf inside those products. If a year goes by and there's still $3,000 sitting there, that means that we just let $3,000 sit on the shelf and depreciate. And especially in this time of inflation, that $3,000 is now $2,500. And as the years go by, that money shrinks and becomes nothing. So for us, we need to move to we would put those on sale or liquidate them or try to get any money we can out of those. Normally what happens is that $3,000 would slowly sell, and it would eventually get to a point where we would have to reorder or remanufacture that part. And so we would just choose not to. And then we take that $3,000 and we put it into some cool new Mark 8 products or a Mark 7 product or a B9 3.0 T product or an RS5 product that thousands of people want. And then that $3,000 comes in to the building as these new products. And hopefully that $3,000 turns into zero within a few months, and we can just keep turning that money. That's how business works. I mean, that's why you go to the clothing store. If you go in the summer, you're not going to find any winter clothes. If you go in the winter, you're not going to, because these products come and go, and nobody wants just stuff sitting on the shelf. Same goes for i5 stuff. We've discontinued a lot of i5 products over the years. It's not because we don't like i5s. It's not because we're trying to ruin people's lives. It's because those products are just sitting and nobody's buying. All right. Does running 20-inch wheels have a noticeable difference versus 18-inch? Yes, massive. The biggest thing you'll notice is the quality of your ride will be typically deteriorated because you've reduced your side substantially. On most Audis, on an 18-inch, you'd have a 40 series rubber, and on a 20-inch, you're going to be down to the 30, 35 series, probably 30. So it just means you went from this much rubber to this much, and that rubber is part of what isolates you from the road. The other problem is once you start getting into some bigger wheels, the chance of damaging your wheel or rim or getting a flat will go up pretty high. So I would say on an RS6 or something big like that, a 20-inch is a small wheel. And I don't even think you could fit an 18-inch on RS6 because the brake rotors are
16 inches.
But on something smaller like an MQB chassis, going from an 18 to a 20-inch will typically look nice, but unless you're on really smooth roads, which almost nowhere in the country has, then you are going to have some problems.
Yeah.
Actually, our brand new 8Y S3, the first week we had it, I was driving it, and I hit a pretty light pothole and ripped the tire and had a sidewall failure and got a huge flat, on a brand new car. And I think that has 20s.
Yep, 19s.
Those are 19s.
Yeah, but those are the small chassis too, so
Yeah.
even 19s are
and it just has rubber band tires on, so that's what happens. So that's usually why I would stay away from really big wheels and really thin sidewalls. Thankfully, well, no, I think the wheel was damaged too. The factory wheel. Yeah, yeah. When you hit hard enough to,
BMW.
yeah. Well, the BMW had the same issue. Stage 2 TCU for B9.5 S4 ETA.
For B9.5.
Yeah,
That
that should be coming, right?
imminent. Yeah, we're making good progress on that right now. So I think we've got some testing out there going on, but
Should be soon.
yeah, we're in pretty good shape for that right now.
Any chance for a non-carbon fiber intake for the B9 SQ5? Yes, we are working on a. I think we are working on a P34 for them,
Yes.
or an S34.
S34.
So,
Which will still be carbon fiber.
yeah, we are going to do an S34. Sean's right, and it will still be carbon fiber, but it'll be substantially cheaper because it won't be the whole box. I don't know when that's going to be available. It's going to be a little while, maybe later this year. Your TTE710 tuning is almost in the 9s. Do you expect the TTE720 setup to do similar on the RS5? Yeah, I'd say so.
Yep.
It should be just as fast or faster. An extra 10 horsepower. Yeah, the RS5 is a very capable chassis, and it's basically the same
essentially the same car
when it comes to
that
recording. Can we get 034 polos? What do we have anything on the website? No. We've always tried to reserve them for employees in the past. We got to have something. It's I don't know. Maybe we can put something on the website that's not what we wear, so that we can't have we just don't want civilians impersonating us.
Right.
It's frankly a security concern. Although I hear if you just put what are those Caltrans, those vests they wear?
Yeah,
If you just put one of those on,
a reflective vest, it seems
Yeah.
like you can get into anywhere.
Pretty
much, yeah.
anywhere, and just pretend like you know what you're.
Be good.
Just pretend like you know what you're doing, and put on a reflective vest.
Yeah. Maybe carry a lot.
Yeah, some kind of a bag, a tool bag
Yeah.
of some kind. It could just be filled with Twinkies, but you just go right in. Does the E40 file take octane into consideration? Could I theoretically mix 87 rather than 91, 93?
100% takes octane into consideration.
Yeah.
Do not run anything less than 91.
Yeah. Yeah, you need 91 or 93.
You need to start at the base octane that your vehicle recommends, and then add E85 from there to get to an E40 level.
I mean, when it comes to tuning, it's all about the octane,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the amount of fuel doesn't. The difference between 87 and 93, the amount of fuel that you inject isn't that different. It's the timing maps that change based on the octane and the amount of boost and things like that.
Yep.
So yes, E40 is a calculated or assumed octane level.
You can
that's it.
you can certainly run higher. So you can run, if you want to run 100 octane with the 85 or something like that. That's fine. Why am I bleeding?
Yeah, you have I noticed that.
That's nice.
But I didn't want to alarm you.
Yeah, you can run higher. Do not run lower than your minimum spec your vehicle requires. So which would be 91 octane.
And of course, don't run a lot more than E40 either.
Right. Yeah.
But octane, the gasoline octane can be 91. Oh, I thought Sean was talking. I said, "Are there any benefits from a divorce?" I was like, "Well, we could talk about that now." Are there any benefits from a divorced cooling setup on B8 S4? We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
I think they're limited.
Yeah, the coolant loop it doesn't circulate with the rest of the engine. So I mean,
it already is divorced.
It's a divorced flow path. You're going to get a little bit of sharing. Basically at the T where it kind of gets its fill point from.
Yeah, but it's not coolant runs through the radiator and then runs back to
right. It's got its own coolant pump, its own circuit. Mm-hmm. It's completely independent from that aspect. So, we haven't done exhaustive testing on joined versus divorced setups. So,
but I don't think there's anything definitive that says the fastest cars you run divorced setup.
And I've always run the factory joint setup. I know people have had issues running divorce setups with having to be pretty aware and cautious of things like your pressure relief cap and whatnot on that setup. I've seen, or there's been links to failed intercoolers more on the divorce setups because they end up running at a higher system pressure because they're running some other cap.
I think one of the biggest damage I've seen is to people's wallets.
There's that.
It can be devastating.
They can be trickier to bleed, to fill. You've got another loop you're maintaining, so it comes with its own reservoir. We haven't seen a strong need for them.
The 8.5 6-speed here. Last week I was ripping around with friends. Oh, that sounds fun. And they notified me about black smoke coming out my exhaust every time I shifted. Only at 45,000 miles. But that means failing cats, question mark?
No,
not necessarily.
It's so hard to know based on that. I mean, it is running a richer mixture.
It sounds like it's
than
dumping
factory,
some fuel
but
between shifts.
it could be that you just had some soot in the exhaust that was, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe some logging would help.
Yeah, we can certainly check it out. But yeah, it does run, different fueling than stock. Trying to think, it depends what file you're on, but you should be on the normal catalyst file. So, I mean, honestly, you could probably flash back to stock, do the same test, and it'll probably be the same if I had to guess. Our fuel cut strategies are all basically the same as stock when you lift and when you shift. So, yeah, not sure what to make of that without more info.
Yeah. What is the difference between stage 2 and stage 1 TCU map for B9 S5? Well, we've talked about this extensively in our the B9 tech video that we did, but the stage 1 TCU map is essentially what's being referred to as a patch by many customers. But basically, the ECU and TCU work together to determine the safe torque that the engine can produce. Transmission doesn't produce any torque, but it actually does tell the engine it's okay to make this much torque based on all the things the TCU is tracking and managing. From the factory TCU tuning limits the amount of torque. And so our stage 1 simply opens up the parameters and recalibrates all the safety parameters of this TCU tuning to allow the higher torque output at the engine. The benefit of this means that all factory safety systems, including all the health and safety considerations inside the transmission, are taken into account fully by the way we do it.
Yep.
There are other tuners that just go in there and they just do hard settings in the ECU to remove the TCU from being involved. And of course, that eliminates all those safety features as well.
And it's not like that limit is necessarily either anything to do with the transmission. They do this on, you can have the same transmission in a bunch of different cars, and they'll set that limit to be just over what the ECU's normal factory limit is anyway. It's more just that's a pairing. There's no reason the factory would need to go higher than that. They just set it there. And on some ECUs, it's not. On some TCU, that's not. That's either maxed out or not there. Generally in the case where it's there, it's just over the ECU, and to do it right, you really need to lift that to get the correct interaction.
But our stage 1, which we basically give for free for purchasing the stage 1 ECU file, doesn't change or augment the performance of the TCU or how the TCU shifts. That's where stage 2 comes in, where we actually make the TCU shift in a more performance-oriented manner.
Yep.
And so that's why you pay for stage 2. That's the performance TCU version. The stage 1 is, you could certainly argue it's a performance file because it allows the engine to make more torque and power. But stage 2 is the one that you'll want if you actually want the TCU or the transmission to shift differently, shift faster, the rev limit, all the features on.
Yep.
So if you just go to the product page and you read through all the features, you should have a good
And it is it's hard. It's one of those things that's hard to quantify because it's very much a sensation change more than it is like what you can see on like a dyno graph. But it transforms the way the car drives.
The feedback has been phenomenal. When we released stage 2, people lost their minds because it did transform the drivability of the car, and I think people did say, made the car faster too. Would it be possible to have a valet mode or reduced, say, 200 horsepower mode for when the kids are using the car? We do not currently offer any valet tunes. I know this was I don't even know. Do any tuners do that anymore? And there's a problem with even you could, I guess, in any of these modern cars, a valet mode would just keep the throttle body.
Yeah,
closed.
it really depends on the ECU and if it's supported by the ECU for the ECU to even recognize it's in a valet situation.
Well, yeah, or it would be a valet 5.
And I want to say, well, there's valet keys, so it's something that can generally be, to some extent, limited. I'm
Sure.
2-3 letter companies offered it. One of them is now under, but it was
Yeah.
RPM limited. And
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what ECUs have that set up initially. I think it might be there in the 3-liter and the 2.9. But it's
yeah.
not something we will generally mess with.
I mean, basically, if you want someone to drive the car, you just flash back to stock. Yeah, if you can't trust someone to drive the car with stock power, maybe that's obviously a personal decision. But if it was me, I would just put them into a different car. I think. I don't know. But yeah, it's unfortunately for us, we'd have to dedicate engineering resources to making the car slower than stock, and that's just not. And I think I can't remember on one hand how many times we've been asked about this. It's very rare. So. All right, we got a few minutes left. I assume there will not be a P34 intake for the RS5 due to lower production numbers. That's not necessarily true. I think we do have a.
yes, it's on the RS5.
Yeah. So we will be releasing it soon. So you're wrong. We are testing it. What we found is our initial hypothesis years ago was that everyone with RS cars will spend the extra money, and S cars will spend the extra money for carbon fiber because it's a more expensive car and they want quality and all that stuff. But what we find is there's plenty of people who do, which we sell lots, carbon fiber X34 intakes for those cars. But our P34 for the S4 has been very popular simply due to the lower price point. Apparently, people who have enough money to buy a $6,000 car also like to make good financial decisions as well. So we're happy to sell either intake as long as the power and performance is there, and it is. So we did do the RS5 P34 just simply due to the popularity of the S4 P34. So stay tuned. It should be out on the market not in the not too far off future. Updates on the B8.5 surge tank. Yes, we are gearing up to release our universal kit soon. The universal kit can be used in the B8 as we've validated previously. So
B8.5 for the surge tank.
I know, but it's the universal kit.
It won't work with B8. As long as you have a brushless, it'll
Okay.
work. The brushed pumps are a little different.
Oh, so
they're still,
it will only work with the B8.5.
yeah, B8.
All right, so there you go, B8.5. Yes, and it's our surge tank is a brushless fuel.
And it has to do with just the signal and the type of signal that's going to the stock.
Although there's no reason we couldn't.
No, we just need to get. We need to work with the controller on that to make sure to cover it.
Or spec a different pump in there.
It's the controller. It's the actual controller for the
factory controller.
the detorque pump.
No, I'm just saying, we could use a different pump altogether.
It's all in the controller. So that's a brushless pump in there. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's brushless. It's just the way the signal comes in.
But our housing pump a variety of fuel pumps.
Yes, but you would need a different controller to run it. Like there's no reason the pump in there isn't totally fine for it. It's just intercepting the stock signal that is the consideration we have to change.
All right. Well, looks like we are out of time.
Oh, geez, yes. Sorry, I've been debugging network things here while I'm sitting here, unfortunately.
So thank you for joining us once again, and I think we're gonna skip next week because I'm gonna be out of the country. But
that would be tough then. Yep.
Yeah, but we'll see you the week after. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.